千里之行，始于足下. A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I would like to extend a warm welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us. I want to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment, to the here and now, to be fully present and mindfully aware as we all gather together in this sacred Tao process. From previous sessions, you may recall that the chapter title of 56 is the Tao Honored. So that's a straightforward translation of the original Chinese title, Dao Gui Zhang. And then there's also an alternative title. Some of these chapters have two titles. But sticking with the Tao Honored, this is actually important. It's actually all about the very end of this chapter. The focal point of this particular chapter 56, as you heard last time, is mystic oneness. There is a state, this mystical, metaphysical oneness with everything. So Tao cultivators are able to attain this with specific applications of 6 principles in their lives. When they have attained that, they become a whole new person. They are operating at a completely different level. So then the second part of this chapter is devoted to describing what that new person is like, the new person that you become when you attain mystic oneness. So before we get into that, let me go through the analysis that we did before. As usual, we went through the chapter looking for similarities in characters from one line to the next in order to identify the poetic structure in the original text. So to the left, as you can see, the highlighted text, whenever we see a character that repeats from one line to the next, we flag that. And I have also begun to identify what they correspond to in the translation. This is possible because the translation that I do, unlike some of the others, is very exact. I don't skip over anything and I don't add anything that does not come from Lao Tzu. Occasionally, I need to add a preposition, a pronoun here and there in order to make a sentence grammatically sound in English. But I can guarantee that there will be no ideas or concepts from the translator, myself. Everything, every thought, every idea, every notion comes from Lao Tzu, accurately represented in English. So then, looking at the poetic structure, we see 3 sections that we can identify for 56. So as we talked about previously, the first section is kind of short, just 2 lines. And they emphasize this idea about being quiet in order to learn, to know more, to be wiser. This is reiterated in the first line of the second section. Close the mouth is saying exactly the same thing, just in a different way. And then it goes on to outline the other 5 principles that is involved in order to attain mystic oneness. So we were able to cover sections 1 and 2, and we got fairly far into the third and final section. We got to line 13. So the third section, the final section, it is all about describing what happens upon attainment of mystic oneness. What kind of person do you become? We will be devoting quite a bit of attention to that. And just to make sure that we all know where mystic oneness is at, I've added this little highlight with a circle, with a shape, so that you can see Xuan Tong, mystic oneness, is in the middle of the chapter. So the whole chapter pivots around this. Everything before this line, before line 9, from 1 to 8, is about the process that leads up to the attainment of mystic oneness. This is the how-to, this is the step-by-step. Then everything from line 10 down to the end of the chapter, line 16, this is all about the sort of person who is able to attain this level of spiritual refinement. They are the ones that are honored by the entire world. They are the ones who really know, the ones who are wise. Their integrity is rock solid, uncompromised. And it's not due to some kind of defensive mechanism, but because of who they are, how they are, and what they do. So let's continue with the recap, starting with Lao Tzu, the instructions from Lao Tzu on the path, how to walk the path to attain oneness with everything. As I mentioned, it pivots around line 9, and therefore, the first part of it is everything from 1 to 9. And what we talked about previously was that we were able to analyze that section, the 9 lines, and extract 6 principles out of that. We went through each one in detail last time. We ended up with the 6th principle, and the 6 principles were, number 1, talk less to know more and be wiser. This is important because, as you recall, this is the line, this is the principle that had the most coverage from lines 1 to 3 devoted to that. That's how important it is. Now, later on, we're also going to talk about the significance of the quietness that we're talking about. When you talk less, you wanted to know more. The idea is to listen with a humble attitude in the spirit of humility. And it turns out humility is the most important starting point in this entire thing. And it will manifest again in the 6 principles. The second principle is to shut the door on temptations and distractions. In the original text, the doors, plural, describe the eyes and the ears. And this is because temptations and distractions are things that you may see with your eyes or hear with your ears. So to shut the door on that is not to blind yourself and to refuse to listen. It is to mentally be able to manage the incoming input. That which you identify as a distraction and temptation, mentally you are able to shut the door on them. So shut the door is not closing the eyes, covering the ears. It means being aware and picking and choosing, be actively managing your sensory input. Number 3, be gentle and harmonious in your interactions with other people. And you can see that number 3 also comes from the spirit of humility. When you are humble, you are able to act toward other people in a gentle and harmonious way. You will not be trying to criticize them with a sharp criticism, critical remarks. Instead, you would take the soft approach, the light touch. That is very much in accordance with the Tao. Number 4, resolve complexities by holding on to the Tao. So initially, when I studied this, I thought about this as discarding clutter, all kinds of clutter, physical clutter, mental clutter, emotional baggage, etc. As I became more advanced in my studies, I realized that there's more to it than just discarding clutter. It is also about resolving complexities in the confusion, disorientation of the mind by holding on to the oneness, the unity of the Tao. By holding on to the Tao itself, it is able to help you sift through complex thoughts, confusing thoughts, and help you hold on to what is real, what is important. So last time, when we talked about this, I used a story to illustrate the idea of holding on to the original purpose or the original intent. It has a powerful effect of cutting through complexities and contention. Number 5, be naturally humble with everyone. So this is once again the spirit of humility speaking to us. Here, the idea is to get along with everybody. Now, many people are naturally brilliant, but those who are egocentric as well as brilliant can let their mental brilliance blind other people. So Lao Tzu, what he says is that if you are already bright or you become bright through your studies, it is important to mute your glare so that you don't blind other people, make them uncomfortable with the glare of your light. Instead, the muted light, the soft light, is something that can illuminate yourself and other people. It is something that is welcomed by all. That's number 5. Number 6, the last one is to get involved. Get involved with life, other people, the community. You can get involved without being tainted by the material world. That was the idea expressed last time using the lotus flower as our example, as the metaphor for something that grows out of mud, but doesn't take on the mud in the pond, at the bottom of the pond. So this is a very common recurring theme, a common metaphor in Eastern thought. Be the lotus flower. That is the significance. So all of this is just a mini summary of the first half of the Tao Te Ching, chapter 56. This is the upper parts of the pivots that we talked about. And then there's also the bottom part that we're going to completely cover today. We got about halfway through. We got about 4 items. These are descriptions of the characteristics of those who have attained mystic oneness. So to go through line 10 to 13, you will be able to see how we put everything together similarly to what we did with the upper half. So the first one of these characteristics is about, it says, they cannot obtain this and be closer. And there's any number of people who find this line quite confusing. So to decrypt, what it says is basically those who attain mystic oneness, they, having obtained this, cannot be influenced by people who try to get close to them using tactics like flattery or false compliments. So they cannot obtain this and be closer. Very confusing in the original as well as most translations. But it's easy for us to understand once you hang on to that key to understanding this entire section. And we can summarize everything together like this. In this little table here, to the right of this, you will see the different tactics that people use to try to influence somebody. So the first one, the tactic of getting closer, that's to butter up. And sometimes we say to kiss up to someone. That is, hey, buddy, how you doing? You're looking great today. You know, the buddy tactic. So flattery, false compliments have no effect on those who have the attainment of mystic oneness. Why not? Well, it's because in the process of attaining that, someone who has attained that level doesn't have an ego that would find such an approach appealing. So they're immune to it. One cannot appeal to their ego. They're not egocentric. There's no ego that you can leverage to take advantage of. These are the people having attained mystic oneness. They prefer to deal with reality instead of a distorted version thereof. And if you think about it, flattery, false compliments, those are all distorted versions of reality, designed to make someone feel better, feel good about themselves. Praise, approval, validation, but ultimately just gratification for the ego. So then we also talked about the opposite tactic of getting closer, and that is becoming distant. In the 6 tactics that you see on the right-hand side, they are separated into 3 groups of yin and yang tactics. Therefore, the complement to getting closer to someone is the tactic of becoming distant. Therefore, the line following line 10, line 11 says they cannot obtain this and be distant. To decrypt, what it says is that those who have attained mystic oneness, you cannot use the tactics of becoming distant to affect them, to influence them. So that makes it into our mini summary here as number 2. Alienation, exclusion have no effect on them. This is the cold shoulder tactic. This is, hey, you don't belong, and then create an opening. Perhaps you can belong. So in order to belong, you have to do X, Y, Z. This is the exclusive membership tactic to keep someone distant and then create an opening. It doesn't work on those who have attained mystic oneness. Why not? Because they are secure. They are self-sufficient. They don't need to be included. They are often included by everyone who like their wisdom, the benefits of their thought process. Them having the Tao is reason enough to include them, but they don't need it. If they are included, that's great. If they're not, that's totally fine too. And therefore, the tactic of becoming distant from someone has no effect if that person has mystic oneness. And then the third one we talked about also, they cannot obtain this and be benefited. This benefit is referring to the tactic of appealing to greed. As I noted previously, it is one of the most common methods of influence. We see it in bribery. We see it in people given the opportunity to hoard goods and therefore becoming influenced by that, getting in line, waiting for hours. It doesn't work on those with mystic oneness. They are spiritually higher than can be affected by greed. So let's go ahead and put that in as number 3, a little summary here, mini summary. They cannot be bought or compromised through greed. The reason why is because by the time they have attained mystic oneness, they know the Tao really well. They understand that they must be self-sufficient. They know they have enough. They understand contentment. Therefore, they don't need more. That's why benefit, graft, greed, bribery, they don't work on the people with mystic oneness. Now, one more remark I'll make on this is that those who are highly attained in the Tao look after their material needs as well. This is completely contrary to the typical notion of Tao monks, Tao masters living with the bare necessities of life, living in poverty even. I want to let everybody know that in a genuine practice of the Tao, there is nothing at all against being able to live in comfort. In fact, to settle material world issues, to arrange things in a comfortable way is actually beneficial. It's actually something that helps in that you will allow the cultivator to concentrate and focus on spiritual matters without the struggle to survive. So, following the Tao correctly means that someone who has attained mystic oneness lives life in comfort, in sufficiency, in contentment, in happiness. Let's move on. The fourth one was where we ended last time. It's about they cannot obtain this and be harmed. This is the yin and yang. This is the opposite to the appeal to greed. To benefit someone, the opposite to that is to threaten to harm them. So this is the method threatening physical harm, some kind of harm. It's fear-based. This also doesn't work very well on people with mystic oneness and for specific reasons. Let's go ahead and put it into number 4 here as one of the things that we have discussed previously. So this is part of our recap as well. They cannot be scared or intimidated by threats. And this is due to a variety of reasons. They take precautions to protect themselves. That's true. But I want to explain that this really comes from the practice of spiritual and mental clarity. When you attain mystic oneness, you're able to see things much, much more clearly so that you understand what's going on and you can act accordingly. This includes being sensible in taking reasonable precautions because the world can be dangerous. It's not all fun and games all the time. So to be realistic and practical, Tao cultivators understand that. Number 2, clarity, letting you see possible threats from a mile away, allows you to sidestep, navigate around, avoid those potential threats. There's no obligation for someone who's cultivating the Tao to intentionally put himself or herself in harm's way, in danger. Indeed, the world is full of toxic influence, violent people. It is beneficial to know where they are, where they may be coming from, and to make sure that you don't need to be too close to such negativity. So that's number 4. And this is where we ended our discussion last time. As you can see from this slide, we got a couple more to go. Just as closer and distant are the 2 opposite tactics in the first group, benefits and harm, opposite tactics in the second group, we have the third group to cover, valued, degraded. So let me explain what they are. So that was a recap from before. Now we transition into line 14. Line 14 is close to the end. This chapter has 16 lines in total, so already the end of this chapter is in sight. That's line 16. Now, before we go further, I'd like to invite everyone to look at this slide, look at the Chinese text to the left-hand side, and I want to point out one thing. I want everyone to look at the last character in line 14, gui. It is the same character as the last character in line 16. You can tell they are the same. They are the same, but they mean different things because each one is contextual. So in terms of translation, let me illustrate the difference. For this one, at the end of this line, it is valued and has a specific context, which I will explain. This is actually a negative connotation, so keep that in mind. The same character at the end of line 16 has a positive connotation. Therefore, instead of valued to be translated the same way as line 14, it's translated differently for line 16, honored. So let's delve into the first context, the negative connotation, and explore what that means. Remember, this is a tactic of influence, a tactic that those with mystic oneness are immune to, are not affected by. So what is the tactic of being valued? Well, in this context, it's the lure of position or prestige. So the idea is this: perhaps the would-be influencer is approaching someone, and that person has no greed that one is well-to-do, already affluent, and therefore greed doesn't work as an appeal. Well, the clever person trying to influence this target would then say that, well, everybody wants something. If they don't want additional monetary resources, material goods, then perhaps I can appeal to them in a different way. So the appeal is similar to greed in that it's what people want, what people usually want, except that in this case, it's about power rather than profits. No longer about money. It's about fame rather than fortune. So think about what people say sometimes. Hey, listen, I can make you famous. That's a lure. That is a lure of becoming valued. It means you will be showered with attention. You will have a high profile. You'll be loved by the people. Wouldn't that be great? So think about that. It's a powerful lure for so many. So the method uses reputation, image, perception. Therefore, because these things are not necessarily the same, they're independent of monetary considerations, so it can work where money fails. Where bribery doesn't work, if the bribery is all hinged upon a value transaction in terms of money, if that doesn't work, then, hey, how about if I help you achieve a higher position? You know, not money anymore, but perhaps more appealing. So now you can see that this would also be something that won't work on those who possess mystic oneness. They're not affected by this because they have no craving for external approval. You know, what use is a high position for someone who has mystic oneness? They see that as being just as transient as material possessions. And it's true, high-level positions come and go. They're here, they're gone. The good opinion of people, transient, impermanent, comes and goes. One day it's here, next day it's gone. So they don't care about that. They're not affected by that. It doesn't influence them. They don't need to be showered with attention. This is related to them being so secure, they don't need some kind of validation by belonging to some kind of exclusive membership. It's similar to that. They don't need external attention, external approval. They're just fine on their own. We now have enough to add to the mini summary. So we're continuing the work from last time. Now we have a number 5. They do not care for the promise of fame. Doesn't matter to them. They have no craving for attention. Now, keep in mind that before you attain this level, many people, perhaps even most people, do to some greater or lesser extent have that sort of craving. And these tactics all become weapons against most people, because even with just the 5, we haven't talked about the 6 yet. With the 5 items here, you can tell if one of these doesn't work, one of the other ones will, for most people. It takes someone who's truly strong spiritually, strong, powerful spiritually, to not be affected by any of these factors. So what about the 6? Let's take a look at line 15. They cannot obtain this and be degraded. So to be degraded is the opposite of being valued. Now that you have seen the previous 3 examples, you can easily guess what this tactic is all about. The opposite method, instead of helping you build up your reputation, making you famous, is the threat of ruining your reputation, tearing you down, making you not famous, but infamous. See, with the understanding, with the key to decrypt this entire section, something that is very difficult to understand for other people can become very easy and clear for us. That's the difference that accurate translation and interpretation makes. So let's talk about this. Think about the extreme form of this method. Blackmail, extortion. Hey, listen, I'll tell everyone what you have done unless you do what I say. Okay? Blackmail, extortion. Now, would this work on those who possess mystic oneness? Those who have undertaken the journey to eventually arrive at the realm of mystic oneness, they are also immune to this, because in the process, in their quest to get to that level, they have decided to live their lives in accordance with the Tao. That is how you get to mystic oneness. You won't be able to get there unless you have lived in accordance with the Tao so much that it becomes a part of you, and it's not possible for you to be anything other than congruent with the Tao. Therefore, it doesn't matter to them if someone was to come up with a blackmail threats or extortion, because their conscience is clear. They can look themselves in the mirror. They know themselves. They understand what they have done. They understand that they have walked the path with clear conscience, and nothing else matters. Therefore, any attempt to blackmail them or to use extortion on them would really be just a slander and will be ineffective. That gives us everything we need for the 6 item here. They do not fear the threat of defamation, to be degraded. Why? They know themselves. knowing themselves is an important centerpiece in Tao cultivation. So now we have a picture of someone, a person of rock solid integrity, someone who cannot be bought, not for sale, who cannot be forced, cannot be coerced, who cannot be bent against their will to do something against their ideal. You begin to get a sense for what it means to have mystic oneness. Do we have examples like that? Yes, we have examples like that throughout history. The greatest figures that we have from history possess mystic oneness. Now, they don't necessarily call it mystic oneness. It may just be character. They may say character matters. They may possess the strength, the great strength of integrity and character. They may not call it mystic oneness at all, but they are exactly as described by Lao Tzu in this chapter. Everything leading up to that attainment and the characteristics of having that attainment. And we can look at the history of humanity. We can look to people, great figures, historical figures like Abraham Lincoln, Nelson Mandela, inspirational figures from all over the world, East and West. That is what Lao Tzu has been talking about in this entire chapter. Such people could never be tempted, distracted, threatened, or forced to go against their ideals. So then it doesn't surprise anyone, I think, that these great figures would be the ones that are honored by the entire world. Not just the entire world, but subsequent generations who hold them up as great examples for everyone, past and present. And there you have it. That, in a nutshell, is mystic oneness. And I don't think we have ever explored the concept in this level of detail before. And I am very happy to have the opportunity of doing so. We are now ready for the paraphrase for this chapter. Having gone through this entire talk, I think the paraphrase will make a lot of sense to you. So again, our purpose is to be accurate in terms of meaning and to be able to talk about the original with modern vernacular. So the section 1 is the simple one, simple idea. Doers don't talk, talkers don't do, that sort of thing. Those who know do not talk, those who talk do not know. So we can paraphrase it in a simple way, understandable way. The wise ones who really understand do not babble, just another way to say the same thing. Conversely, those who babble endlessly show how little they understand. Now, as I mentioned last time, we want to use this internally and externally. Internally, we want to practice, cultivate quietness. That is, we talk less in order to listen more so that we can observe and learn. That observation includes applying the same idea to other people. We can use these two lines to assess how much someone knows by how much they carry on and on about a particular topic. Do they babble? Do they talk too much? In that case, they don't know enough. So that is the paraphrase for the first section. Let's talk about section 2. That is about the specific methods, ways of attaining mystic oneness. What is mystic oneness? Well, you have attained mystic oneness if you can do everything from 3 to 8, line 3 to line 8. So here's the way that I would like to paraphrase it. Again, keeping the emphasis on making the passage easy to understand. When we observe people with the above in mind, we learn the importance of shutting the mouth in order to listen and closing the door on temptations and distractions in order to focus. We also learn how to blunt the sharpness of harsh words and criticisms against others, unravel the complex knots of life by simplifying everything, use the brightness of the mind to illuminate rather than to blind others with its glare, and get involved with the world without becoming attached to it. If we're able to do all of the above consistently, then we can attain the state known as mystic oneness. So these are pretty clear instructions. These are practical guidelines for living our lives day to day. Then we get to the final section, which is what we went through today, what we completed today. We started last time with the 4 attributes from line 10 down to line 13. We finished today by adding 14 and 15 into the mix. So this is the section that is usually difficult to understand and therefore will benefit the most from a paraphrase in modern language that is easy for everyone to understand. So let's try this particular paraphrase. Those who possess mystic oneness have no inflated ego, so you cannot influence them by getting closer to them with flattery. They are secure in themselves, so you cannot influence them by excluding them or keeping them distant. They have no greed or fear, so you cannot influence them with promises of profit or threats of loss. They have no need for external approval, so you cannot influence them with fame and attention or dishonor and criticism. Such individuals are rare indeed, and that is why many of them become recognized for their greatness by the entire world. So that is the paraphrase for 56. I think, and I would encourage that you create a paraphrase of your own, that you can create something probably pretty close to it, but say everything in your own words. Now, the very last thing that we should do with this particular chapter is to tie the very end, line 16, to the very beginning, line 1. That is what we call the full circle, connecting the end of the chapter back to the beginning to really get the essence of the Tao. And this is because the Tao is circular. When you look at the end, reference back to the beginning, you can really get the flavor of the Tao, the essence of the Tao. So this will take us just a few minutes to go through. We know that in the last line of this particular chapter, it's talking about being honored by the world. That is, those who possess mystic oneness are honored by all. The world is just, everyone. So that's the very last line. Then we link it back to the beginning. Remember, the beginning is about the wise ones, the ones who really know, remaining quiet in order to listen and learn, so that we can deduce from there that those who keep talking, who cannot shut up, those are not the wise ones. Those are not the ones who actually know. So then we link it back down again to the very end, and in that process, of course, we go through the subsequent lines, the details, the ways, the methods of attaining mystic oneness. So all of that is in the middle, but now we can see from this full circle that there's a message from Lao Tzu. The path to mystic oneness begins with an open mind, a willingness to listen. This is the attitude of being receptive. It's a humble attitude. It's the readiness to learn. When you are ready to learn, you are naturally quiet because you are too busy absorbing and considering new ideas to talk a lot. Humility also leads you to not being critical against other people, blinding them with the glare of your light. Therefore, humility is the first step toward mystic oneness. The genuine practice of humility literally is half the battle to winning mystic oneness. So that is the extra insights that we can get from the full circle. In our summary, I want to revisit mystic oneness and make sure everyone gets the complete set of summaries for 56. We previously talked about doers don't talk, talkers don't do, the wisdom of being quiet, and then using that wisdom to observe other people to discern if they too are wise, if they remain quiet, or unwise if they talk too much. So that was part 1 of our summaries for 56. Part 2, which we did last time, was about the 6 principles of mystic oneness, the 6 methods of attaining mystic oneness. The very first one is about talking less. The second one is about temptations and distractions, that you need to manage that actively. The third one is to not poke at people with the sharpness of your critical remarks. Number 4 was to untangle knots, unravel knots representing complexities by holding on to the Tao. Number 5 was to be humble, to be muted in your brilliance so that you can illuminate and not blind people with your glare. Number 6, the last one, was to be the lotus flower growing out of mud, but not tainted by the mud, which means that you actively participate in the material world without being attached by the material world or affected, tainted by the material world. You can enjoy your wealth without becoming slave to wealth. Finally, we have to talk about the attainment of mystic oneness, those who possess mystic oneness. So now you remember we have the 6 different tactics of influence grouped into 3 sets of 2 lines each, the yin and yang tactics. But those who possess mystic oneness are not affected. False compliments and flattery have no effect on them. Exclusion, alienation have no effect on them. They cannot be bought, they're not for sale, they cannot be compromised through the offer or the appeal to greed. Nor can they be scared or intimidated by issuing threats. Number 5, forget about the appeal of fame or power, the high profile, the attention. They don't care about that. So it doesn't work on them. And finally, number 6, they have no fear of degradation, defamation, extortion, blackmail, because they live right. So that is Mystic Oneness. I felt that it was very important for us to complete the picture for 56 because of its central importance. Next time, our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us all travel safely so we can meet again. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.